Good afternoon from the Philippines. I hope you're all having a safe and warm time with your families and loved ones, despite the calamities that have been hitting the country, most parts of the country recently. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you are in the world. I hope that you're equally safe and sound despite the challenges of the pandemic. I am Gina Opiniano of the Philosophical Association of the Philippines, and I'm honored to be moderating the program today. So this is the launching of the voters education campaign tagged as Isip Boto, MANDATO, Magnilay at Manindigan Bago Bumoto, organized by the PAP, Philippine Sociological Society, and a group of professionals in partnership with various professional associations and academic organizations who will be introduced later on for their parts of the program. Welcome to this significant event, so considered because this marks our declaration of our commitment to take humble initiatives for the upcoming national elections in the Philippines on 2022. And this project has its hope that the efforts that we will do will bear fruit towards meaningful participation of the electorate or the citizens in the elections. For the philosophy people, this is a rather extended part of the summit of the Union of the Societies and Associations of Philosophies in the Philippines, or USAP. And we are happy that you are still able to join us for this program after 4 days of the conference. For our partners, this extra effort that you're doing, whether you're part of those who conceive the project or the idea, or an addition to the concretization of the goals of the project, your presence today is an affirmation of your sincere intention to make a change. So thank you very much for that. And speaking of organizers and contributors, or rather partners, we would like to thank the Philosophical Association of the Philippines, headed by its president, Dr. Jeremiah Joven Joaquin, and its board members, USAP, headed by or represented by its outgoing Secretary General, Dr. Danilo Alterado, and its Board of Trustees. Thank you very much. And of course, to the Philippine Sociological Society Board, or PSS Board, headed by Dr. Louis Benedict Ignacio, for the support to this project. Of course, we acknowledge with gratitude the De La Salle University Southeast Asia Research Center and Hub, or DLSU Search, headed by Dr. Fernando Santiago Jr., our partner, multimedia partner for the USAP Summit and this program. Thank you very much, Dr. Fernie. And we also acknowledge our Isip Boto collaborators or partners whose representatives are here with us today. To the Pambansang Samahan sa Psikolohiyang Pilipino, represented by Professor Darren Dumaop. And of course, the LSU Institute of Governance, headed by Dr. Ador Torneo, for being a significant part of this project. So we value your contributions, your affirmation of the need to conduct this project, and the future collaborations that we will do for this project. Thank you very much. And of course, we would like to assert that we maintain that this project is non-partisan, and we would like to ensure our independence all throughout the conduct of the project, manifest, for example, by not accepting commissioned works if there will be any by any politicians. Okay, so once again, we are live on Facebook, and for those who are watching us on Facebook, we also likewise extend our gratitude for taking time to listen or to watch our program today. Please feel free to share the live stream to others. Okay, so at this point, I would like to call on the president of the PSS, one of the Isip Boto project leads, to give some words of welcome, friends, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Louis Benedict Ignacio.
Hi, good afternoon. Here in the Philippines, and as Gina has mentioned, good morning and good evening to our other participants who are joining us from different parts of the world. Thank you, Gina, for the opening and introducing Isip Boto and for the kind introduction as well. Again, I'm Louis Ignacio. I am currently the president of the Philippine Sociological Society, and I'm very happy to be with you this afternoon and share with you this advocacy of wanting to have a better election in 2022 and consequently a better Philippines thereafter. Um, the concept of Isip Boto and the advocacy to come up with this voters education is really anchored on the idea of freedom and democracy. For most of us, our uh, general notion of a working democracy is that if there is a free, fair, regular conduct of elections, and for most of us, as long as there is free, fair, regular conduct of elections, then we already consider a country a democratic country. But we need to realize that for us to say that a country is really or really has a working democracy, it should go beyond just a free, fair, regular conduct of elections. Um, for a country that values democracy so much, we should realize that other factors need to be considered. First, there need to be a consistent rule of law, a working constitution that everyone subscribe to, whether you are a regular citizen or a government official, a rule of law that is applicable to everyone. That's very essential for us to categorize a country to be democratic or a good democracy. Second, a free market. Of course, this can entail to a lot more discussion when we talk about market and free market, whether it's a liberal economy, a free market economy, a capitalist economy. But the idea is that the market, the economy should be free enough that it allows competition that should naturally lead to a better delivery of product and services. It's another. Third is a platform for free opposition, meaning the government um, allows different platforms for criticism, for opposition to state their piece, and that the government does not hold everyone on their necks. Okay? That's the third. Of course, the fourth is the regular conduct of free, fair elections. The fifth characteristic of a good democracy is an informed electorate. Okay? Because even if um, we conduct elections, even if the opposition is there, even if the economy is free and we have a ruling constitution, if the electorate are not informed or is not informed, truly, genuinely informed, then their decisions will still be misleading, or their decisions will still be misled by fake news, by propaganda. So we thought that it's high time that we go beyond the description of a free, fair, regular conduct of election as the only standard for us to consider the democracy in the Philippines as a working democracy. That's why Isip Boto as we launch it today, would like to target at least one of these characteristics, and that's the informed electorate. Isip Boto would like to provide different platforms so that we can discuss election-related issues and election-related concerns that should be known and should be exposed to a lot of us, or to every one of us. Isip Boto also would like to encourage and empower our electorate, the voters, to really participate, not just, of course, that's very important to vote, but not just voting, but engaging in the discourse and empowering others to also speak up and participate in engagements like this. So in behalf of everyone behind Isip Boto, PAP, PSS, our partner institutions, I welcome you all. I thank you for being with us this afternoon. There's still a lot more work to do, but together we are hoping that we can have a fruitful, successful, hopefully a better election come 2022. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Mabuhay kayo at salamat.
Salamat, Louie. So thank you very much for such an enriching discussion on the importance of democracy and on having a contribution to an informed electorate. So that's just a preview, ladies and gentlemen, of what's in store for today's program. Listening from the remarks of Louis alone gives us an idea of how passionate the organizers or the people behind this project are in pursuing this project. So thank you. Again, we'll listen to Louis hopefully later on in the other parts of the program. We hope to learn more from him or hear more from him about this project. Thank you, Louis. Okay, so some of you might be wondering, of course, just like any other programs, it's a wonder to some how is the project conceived as such or named as such. So, bakit Isip Boto? For those who are joining us or not from the Philippines, thank you for being here. And we hope you also learn and or contribute to the discussion later on about your own practices in your country in terms of democracy, suffrage, and the election specifically. So why Isip Boto and why this word mandato, Magnilay at Manindigan Bago Bumoto? Some of you might be interested with the story behind this project. I hope there are those who are interested. So to give us more details on how this project was conceived, we'll listen to the rationale of the project. But again, let me just say that as one of those who was part of the early stage of the conception or the development of the project, I had the opportunity to witness how this project, I would say, has blossomed into what it is now. Just like what Louis said, there's still a lot of work to be done. We're still in the beginning part of the project, and this is intended to be a long-term program. So but we're happy to share how it has progressed or it has developed into into the idea that it is now. So to be concerned with the national elections, 2022 elections, and other national issues, as we know, entail mustering efforts or courage and strength, and let's also include tolerance, especially given our personal and professional concerns. So to conceive of a project on voters' education, to me personally, is one step upward display of courage, love for the country, and integrity. one person who has shown such concern, courage, and integrity is one of the project leads of Isip Boto, along with me and Bluey and other concerned people. I'd like to introduce the person who will share the rationale of this project. She is the auditor of both the Philosophical Association of the Philippines and the Philippine National Philippine National Philosophical Research Society, or PNPRS. Friends, gentlemen, and ladies, Dr. Fleur de Lis Altez Albela.
Good afternoon. A thoughtful rainy afternoon to all from Manila. Now more than ever, our nation is confronted by the challenge to become effective agents of change. Quite a cliche, but we really need this. Caught by the restrictions brought by the pandemic, our face mask, shield, and quarantine, freedom is obviously hampered due to this virus. Our freedom is obviously blocked by the causes why we are left out, remaining in this mask and still confined. For almost 2 years, we have been fending for ourselves as though licking our own wounds, even if we know for sure that we have entrusted our sense of peace and security, our well-being to the people we have elected 6 and 3 years ago. Next year, and even if we still need to wear our mask and keep apart, we are compelled to overcome the scare of COVID-19 by performing our right and duty to vote. So this is also an implicit reminder, be vaccinated. The Filipino people are again given the opportunity to exercise a sovereign act, not just for one's good, but for the good of all. The need for a thoughtful exercise of freedom is what prompted us to form Isip Boto, Magnilay at Manindigan Bago Bumoto. In short, MANDATO, a campaign that the nation should have heard long ago from those who were accused to be in the pearly gates and ice castles of the academe. With the pressing concern to educate the public about what it means to vote, which leads to the question who one must vote, we aim to reach through mainstream media platforms, through and hopefully outside the internet. Hoping to go beyond our Zoom rooms and webinars, we shall strive to make ourselves heard, to impart the moral value of electing leaders, and to encourage responsible and well-informed participation in the national elections in 2022. You may say that our goals are lofty, but we simply just want to be heard, to encourage reflection that can bring about change, with the objective of informing, educating, and encouraging. So we go to the objectives. It would be nice if you can we flash the slides now for objectives. So the keywords would be to inform, educate, and encourage. Then eventually we hope to empower those who will see our outputs by giving them the chance to see the moral dimension of voting and governance. We plan to do this, we move to the next slide. We plan to do this initially by releasing the easiest to create. Initially, the following social media PubMats will be released: quotations on freedom, democracy, and voting to be translated into regional languages, election-related information, like hopefully historical and sociological snippets that can awaken our consciousness as Filipinos, and third, materials on critical thinking that can be used at the time of elections, such as sound reasoning and some sort of fallacy awareness during campaigns. We also plan to release informative short videos and hopefully, radio ads that can bring us out of the internet, away from the internet. With the shared effort of our partner organizations, we shall continue to do what we are good at, of course, instruction. We shall teach in the most accessible space at the time of the pandemic, which is in this place, in the internet. And so, we call for your help as we officially launch this important project, we hope to have you in our future events as volunteers and participants. So we have on screen a sampler of our PubMat. This one is a translation of a quote from Abraham Lincoln in Ivatan, and the other one in blue a while ago is a translation to Hibigay Nun. Okay, and we thank our volunteers. These are philosophy students and teachers, okay, who have translated the quotes in their native languages. And then we move on to the next project. So these are short videos that we intend to dispatch through social media, internet, but we hope if we are given the opportunity, okay, if good faith will allow us, then we hope to release this in mainstream media. And so, as said by Gina and Louis a while ago, there's a lot of work to do, and we need help. We need a lot of help. And then we move to the next slide, and there isn't much description here yet because radio ads is still something that we have to figure out logistically, but that is we think that that's the highest point because that is to go beyond the internet already, and Project 4 is about what we are good at, and that is to communicate, instruct, and have an exchange through webinars and fora. Of course, to be streamed live so that it could reach the farthest possible place at the internet. Okay, so again, we call for your help as we officially launch this important project. We hope to have you in our future events as volunteers and participants. So in what areas can we collaborate? Through content research, content production, professional network, forum and webinar logistics, provision of resource speakers, dissemination, volunteers and intern referrals, and in other ways that you may think of. We hope to work with our partner organizations, and we hope to pitch in whatever we can according to the strengths of our group so that the projects and the other projects that you may think of that could be placed under Isip Boto may be executed successfully. Okay, and so we move to the next page for the link where you can register. And as volunteers, as collaborators, and you will be asked on what regard you may help. There are categories that you can choose from. And so help us impart the message that each vote is important as long as it is a choice made by a well-informed consciousness and a conscience that thinks not just for oneself but for all others. We open Isip Boto and we do this for our nation. And so, on behalf of the people behind this project, maraming salamat po at mabuhay ang nag-iisip na botanteng Pilipino.
Thank you, Flor. So that officially launches our Isip Boto project, program or campaign, our voters education campaign, as explained by Fleur, how it intends to contribute to, or rather, well, some would say fill some gaps or answer some questions, and this, according to the explanation, has its humble goals. And we hope, again, we reiterate the invitation to you to be part of this project. So if you or your organization or institution are interested to partner with us, I hope you got the link. If not, you can send us a message in our association Facebook group. That's Philosophical Association of the Philippines Incorporated, or via the email address tapbeyond2019 @gmail.com. So let me just show you that email address. You find that at the bottom of the word roundtable discussion. Thank you, Fleur, for the passion as well that you pour into this project. This would not have been possible if not of your consistent engagement to the process of going through uh, uh, the process of conceiving of a project, along with Louis and, as what I said, other members of the associations we're working with and our professionals. So I hope you got the gist or the idea of the Isip Boto project, why it's called Isip Boto, who are its potential targets, what are its target platforms, and how else you can contribute. So the nature is actually both mostly academic, but we can also go beyond that because we intend to reach as many audiences as possible, as many sectors of the society as possible. So hopefully you'll be able to contribute to the concretization of the goals of this project. Now, while we have learned about the project and we are here to launch the project, we still have more to share to you. And this is going to be the next part of the program. We will have a roundtable discussion. The roundtable discussion will focus on the discussion of the topic beyond deficit, centering local knowledges in democratic conversations. So this is actually the title we give. I, along with the interlocutors for today and our other friends, have given us the working title for a paper we are completing, or we are almost done to write as a response to this project. So while it started to be a discussion, a casual discussion, like the usual, keeping in touch with friends or with colleagues and former classmates, in our case, such has led to a fruitful and productive conception of an idea to contribute to a voters' education campaign. So right now, today, we're going to present the result of these discussions with you that we had to work, we conceived of. And again, this also in consonance with the goals of the Isip Boto project. It may have its own peculiarities, but ultimately the paper intends to contribute to achieving to the goals of the Isip Boto project. So with me will be in a panel of interlocutors who I would like to members of which I'd like to introduce now. Our first interlocutor, who prefers to be introduced briefly, is currently the provincial internal auditor of the provincial government of Pangasinan. The provincial internal auditor, ladies and gentlemen, this is not the celebrity Louis Ocampo, but our friend, our colleague, Mr. Louis Ocampo. Good afternoon, Sir Louis.
Hello, good afternoon. Rainy day for all of us. I hope all are safe.
Thank you. Next would be our second interlocutor is a postdoctoral fellow at the Department of Communications and New Media, Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, National University of Singapore. His work examines transnational connections between migrant Filipino domestic workers in Singapore and their left behind families in the Cordillera, northern Philippines. He investigates how the transnationalization of families shapes intergenerational mobility and educational aspirations. Our second interlocutor was previously a Fulbright scholar at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and an NYU Standard, I hope I pronounced that right, faculty first Luke Scholar and a Melbourne International Research Scholar at the University of Melbourne, where he also obtained his PhD in Sociology and Cross-Cultural Education. He is Dr. Eliezer J. De Los Reyes. Hi, Jay. Good afternoon.
Hi, everybody. From Singapore. I hope everyone is safe and feeling cozy.
Yeah, thank you. Next would be the only female in the panel. And she is an independent writer and researcher interested in indigenous politics, deepening democracy, and commons-based collaborative economies. She is no other than Miss Karen Calderon. Hi, Karen. Good afternoon.
Hello. Hi, Gina. Can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you for being with us.
Hi, everyone.
All right. Next one would be the fourth interlocutor, a faculty member of St. Louis University, and is currently completing his Doctor of Philosophy in Management at the same university. He is also an active research advisor who recently finished collaborative research work on the West Philippine Sea. International political economy and political theory are some of his areas of interest and most enjoyed pedagogical discussion. That's why he's here with us today. Let's welcome Anthony Brian Padilla. Hello, Bri.
Hi, Gina.
Okay, your internet
Hey,
is
everyone.
okay. I hope.
Everyone is safe.
Okay, so looks like it's
Good.
in the Cordilleras. Brian in Baguio.
Am I audible?
And just like Manila, it's also being hit by the Typhoon Fabian or by the Habagat. Thank you. Last but not the least, interlocutor is a communications professional who has degrees in political science and consular and diplomatic affairs. He took graduate studies in public management at the Ateneo School of Government. Let us welcome Mr. Ian Vergel Agsalda.
Hello, good afternoon, Gina. Good afternoon, everyone.
Okay, so these are our interlocutors, and let's have a little focus on these people. So for this afternoon, we'll be talking about, as what I said, the project we initially wanted to just be, a discussion of some issues that we missed talking about when we were younger. So for everyone's information, we got connected because we were friends, or we met as Pol Sci students, then Pol Sci students in college, who eventually became friends and are now happy that aside from being friends, we're also productively contributing to the national elections. I hope so. So I will be facilitating the discussion, and if you have questions to our interlocutors, please feel free to use the chat or the Q&A box, and I will be relaying them to the interlocutors later on during the allotted time. For now, we would like to just talk about how the project started, and we would like, as we agreed, to focus on the process of coming up with this project, as we think this is very important to share, as this might bring forth, realizations and lessons from interested people like us to also maybe do the same thing or dig into similar initiatives. So let's get ready to discuss some of the things that we considered for the completion of this project. Well, completion in the sense that we are just starting to we just launched the project, and we are not even halfway through the conceptualization of the rest of the details, but we consider this to be an accomplishment already. Okay, so friends, I'll be asking questions to you, and please feel free to share your thoughts about these questions. These have been thought of to cover the significant points or the salient points of our paper. All right. So first, I would like to ask you, what are some points of, maybe we can start also share to the audience how our commonality or our points of commonality. What are some points of commonality that brought the group together for this project? So what do you think are what could be things that we could share to the audience as points of our commonality for them to understand better the perspectives we're coming from?
Hey,
Maybe
G. Okay.
okay, Brian, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Hope you don't mind me going on. I mean, I'm be on off video. I think I'm having intermittent internet connection. I hope that's all right with you. I'll just try to fix that later or shortly. But first off, to answer your question, Gina, basically, of course, thanks for the introduction. Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to everyone. First off, our common ground or our commonality is that we're friends, of course, and that we are political science graduates from St. Louis University, but we came from different batches of the said university. Gina, Ian, and Louis are from batch 2005, while Karen, Jay, and I are from batch 2006. No, you see, we just think that we're, a bunch of misfits trying to save the world or the Philippines for that matter. Kidding aside, we think there is a dire need to create a call to action and to create a galvanizing effort as a response to the disenfranchisement, or we say disillusionment, of the foregoing maladies that Juan de la Cruz, the Philippines, our state is experiencing. We are in a political quagmire, and that is not a hidden truth. What turned out to be a normal chore in the afternoon on the 23rd of March, as I cook lunch for the family, Gina sent me a message asking me, of course, kumusta, como esta, or how are you? Little did Karen and Jay know, this is the only time that they'll know that Gina and I had been in talks about a possible webinar or a symposium project. So I began messaging Jay and Karen, asking for their most available, if not their most convenient time. And the rest was history. To cut the story short, the project was conceptualized or made into reality because of the prolonged isolation and the discomforts brought about by the pandemic and the government's so-called response. Further, what enabled or propelled the group to collectively come up with this project was the webinar reunion of batch 2005, as spearheaded by Gina, Ian, and Louis. Apparently, they have also invited some remarkable speakers who also happen to be our college mentors, specifically Sir Jopo Andaya. Shout out to you, sir, if you're watching. In his speech, we were motivated by one of his four discussion, a very unpopular, distracting, and disturbing question. Ano ang ambag mo? Or in English, what is your contribution? True enough, his response was rather simple, yet very meaningful. That as byproducts of the social science or political science discipline, creating an avenue for discourse, dialogues, and conversations is in itself a valuable contribution. Consequently, this project was conceived as an offshoot of his answer to that very unpopular question. Now, as derivatives of the discipline, political science, we have to heed the call and give a sound contribution or ambag to this country. Since elections are fast approaching, the group asked, can we make participation in elections meaningful? So we will try to answer this question as we go along with the program and will be further discussed by my fellow interlocutors. So that's it. That's the story behind this project, Gina.
Thanks, Bri. Yeah, shout out to our professor who is also here. Thank you for being with us today, Sir Jopo. And we hope indeed that this is a response to the call to this ambag that Sir Jopo was talking about. Such a challenge to take, but we're taking little steps, hopefully just enough, or just para bang yung sinasabi dito sa isang kwento ng starfish story, that although there's an enormous number of starfish out in the ocean na tinangay or tinangay ng wave. Even when you put back one small starfish back to the ocean, you're making a difference. So I hope that's something that's also being targeted by this project. Thank you, Bryce.
You're welcome.
Internet mo, yeah, it's okay. I hope it will be better para makapag-turn on ka ng camera mo in the next discussions. Okay.
Sure.
So anybody else would like to add to the story to situate or contextualize our project? So that's our humble beginning. We're friends and we have a common ground in the sense that we all were students of AB Political Science at St. Louis University in Baguio City. And now we're doing this as professionals and as interest or concerned. Can we use that, concerned individuals? Okay, how about so when we were talking about these issues or these concerns, what things that happen in the country, how can you share to the audience how were we able to pinpoint the issue that we want to actually address? Because of course, it could start with a vast, topic or for example, my concern on feminism and Jay's concern on transnational democracy and Louis' political government exposure. How did we actually pinpoint what specific issue should we address?
Hi,
Maybe
Gina. Yeah.
Karen?
Have we already pinpointed the issue? I mean, I think we have not really done that. We're not really sure if the issue that we really want to zero in is the one that we want to do something about. But but this is a process for us. It's a messy process actually, because as you said, we come from different professional backgrounds and experiences. Even if we came from the same beginning, we were all students of political science, but that was more than 10 years ago. So we've had a lot of experiences since then, and we have a lot of perspectives, different perspectives, sometimes conflicting perspectives to bring to the table. So it's a messy process for us, but it's a process that we want to go through anyhow. There is no consensus yet, I believe, on what we really want to do. We have lots of discussions, we have lots of debates, lots of disagreements, but we're still in this together, which is the beauty of it. But I think I'd like to discuss a little bit on the overall context of the discussions that we've had since March. Of course, there's the current political crisis that we are all experiencing. There's been an increase of violent events since 6 years ago, or maybe even earlier. The war on drugs, there's red tagging, of course, there's the pandemic, and we are not really happy about the way the government is responding to the pandemic because of the sheer, callousness and inefficiency of the system that is in place. And of course, there's the upcoming elections in 2022. When we were discussing, we sort of thought maybe we could do something to influence the outcomes of the next elections. But then again, we recognize that it's a lot more complicated than that. We recognize that the problem is structural. It has something to do with, the very legal and institutional structures that makes election not very meaningful for popular participation. And so there are all these, complex issues. But at the same time, we do see spaces of engagement or spaces for engaging with local government units. I remember us discussing about also in 2022, the Supreme Court decision on the Mandanas Garcia petitions, which is going to affect the internal revenue allotment of the local governments, is going to be implemented. And we see that as an avenue for experimenting, how to engage with local governments. Maybe we can do something in that aspect as well. So I think that by doing this project, we're really only beginning to scratch the surface. So and there's a lot really for us to discuss when it comes to that. So yeah, that's our process. I will leave it to the rest of the group to discuss the provisional, so to speak, project that we have so far determined to pursue.
Right. Thank you,
Yeah.
Karen. So there's
Just
no yeah.
sorry.
There's Karen said there we have not actually pinpointed that. There's no consensus, but there was a consensus when she said hindi pa natin na pinpoint yung issue. But yeah, you're starting from somewhere, okay? You were saying something, Bri? Would like to add to the discussion? Go ahead.
Yeah, just a consolidation, a very quick wrap up of basically what sums up Karen's discussion. You see it very well that later on you will hear from Ian and Zay that we will be working on several assumptions, and that these assumptions shall guide us through the very core of this project. We believe that by challenging the status quo, we also offer an alternative or alternatives to the very orthodox process of voters' education and civic education. In this case, we provide a provocation to the existing democratic systems and, of course, social order, particularly electoral politics. So I think that would be all, Gina.
Mm-hmm. Challenge the status quo is I'd say can I use the word ambitious? It is, but well, it's something that led us to further discussions or more argumentation. And if you can recall, we were not all on the same side when we were conceiving of this project. If you recall, there was this sharing of Karen's pessimism of having to go through this kind of project again as others have been doing, and her frustration that it might not contribute to anything or might not give any change, if at all, will impact the lives of the electorate. But despite that, we still proceeded to the next parts of the process. Okay, so let's talk about the more detailed aspects of the project. What is the project about? So in the earlier presentation of Fleur, she talked about some of the specific projects that we can engage in executing the goals of the project. But this specific aspect of the Isip Boto project or program, what is it all about? What is it trying to address?
Hi, Gina.
Anyone?
Okay. Hi, Gina.
Hi, okay. Ian.
Yeah. Yeah. Before we go to the specifics of the project and before Jay explains to us what is the project all about, I just wanted to share on how it started, on the different ideas that we have. I would like to thank Karen for highlighting that it was a messy process because it was a messy journey actually, because we are now connected into different organizations, and that's reflected on the diverse ideas that we discussed during the conception of the Isip Boto project. So at start, we talked about coming up with a TikTok account wherein there will be mini documentaries or mini talks about the society. And yet we thought that we're just limiting our audience to those who have internet access or to those who have TikTok accounts. And it's just a one-way process. It's just giving information to the people, and it's not the dialogue. It's not a conversation that we're creating. And then we also thought about having an influencer. But then again, we have the question, who will be this influencer? What will be his profile? And the resources that we have, will he be paid, or there will be biases in choosing who will be our influencer? And then we also thought about having a gamification wherein there will be a snakes and ladders thing, wherein if you choose the right candidate, you go up the ladder if you choose something like that. But again, it's an app, it's limited to internet, and we're limiting our audience, and it's very expensive to do something like that. So And yet, until we realize that, hey, we're not progressing, that's the time that we already have to write something and create something. And I think Jay will be explaining all about that.
So passing the spotlight today, maybe you would like to add more to what Ian said.
Yeah. So I want to highlight, and I want to, hi everybody. I want to highlight and piggyback on what Karen and Ian already mentioned. But really, I want to foreground the reality that the project actually started from a point of ignorance and uncertainty. So I want to put it out there that we did not really know, number one, what to address. And number two, not knowing what has been there that was used to address these problems that we are ignorant about. So again, it's really coming from a point of ignorance. And so I remember anecdotally, when we were writing the concept paper, I wrote, we don't know what to do because we don't know what has been done out there. And so we had to do kind of a rough environmental scan of projects that have been done. So in the hope that, maybe in knowing what has been done, we might be able to know what other quote unquote better ways can we do to address problems we are not really aware of. And so in doing this environmental scan, we found general proclivities, like 3 salient proclivities of initiatives that were undertaken to address or to do voter education. And the first one is there is this kind of obsession towards fixing technical processes. Like, so they would do information dissemination, they would do campaigns on, how to properly shade the circle in the ballot and all these things.
They're also helpful, Jay, these are also, helpful initiatives, right?
Yeah. I mean, I want to put it out there that these are great initiatives. And then they would train people and all these things. But there was a little discomfort in us thinking about this, focus or kind of like centrism towards this processes, because there is a possibility that we are kind of eliding the structural problems within democratic processes, and maybe assume in a normalized way that democracy is in fact working, and it only takes the proper implementation of democracy for it to work. So that's the first tendency. The second tendency that we saw is it's really all about filling in knowledge gaps. And so again, it's also because it's educative, right? These are educative endeavors. And so they do training on how to cast the vote properly. It's teaching, people certain calculus or rubrics or criteria on how to choose better candidates. Also, lectures and teachings on what are the principles of democracy, and all these things. And then again, we had a discomfort with this tendency. And the discomfort comes from that kind of implicit assumption, whether intended or not intended, as coming from a deficit lens or a deficit perspective, thinking that there might be an assumption that voters do not know enough. That is why we have to give them good knowledge for them to know better so that they can become citizens able to participate in the flourishing of this democracy. But on the other hand, there's also this, again, discomfort on this salvific intent of these educative exercises. Like, there's this tendency to kind of like, we're gonna be there to save people and to save this democracy, which to most of us did not stand really well. And lastly, it's the use of methods that are not very socially responsive and reflective. And just to give you an example of it, we saw a project that that intended to educate kids about democratic processes, and they use a lesson plan from somewhere which is so different from the Philippines. And to me and to most of us, it kind of perpetuated two things. One, the foreignness of democratic exercise. And number two, the perpetuation of, the alienation of people in this democratic exercise. So what happened was, it perpetuated the idea that democracy cannot be quotidian, democracy cannot be an everyday social practice, but democracy sometimes tends to be, this kind of like grand practice and all these things. So it was problematic. So eventually, in the writing process, we had to kind of think about, is it really a problem of lack of education of voters? Or is it a problem of the ways in which we are educating these voters? So it brings us back to, do they really need education, or do we need more education about them? So in the end, we wanted to kind of so what the project is addressing would be definitely two things. Number one, really to address on how to open spaces for a meaningful participation of people in localities, of ordinary people in localities, in ordinary ways, not in super grand ways. And the second one is perhaps a subtle intervention to the practices of educating voters in locality, in a way that doesn't fault them, in a way that doesn't, elide the shortcomings of democracy, and most of all, in a way that it's able to tap into local culture, epistemologies, knowledges, and practices. So yeah, I think those two things are what we are trying to address. Yeah.
Thanks, Jay. So that's quite a lot of input to put on the table, and exactly why we also gave the paper a title, focusing on local knowledges and practices, focusing on providing spaces of local knowledges. That's also the same reason why one of the projects that was a project that was introduced, or a specific category of the execution of the project that was introduced earlier by Fleur, was the translation to regional languages of quotations on related to democracy, suffrage, and elections. So that's also a way of connecting with the people in the different parts of the world, or of the Philippines rather. So that's just one, and there's a lot more that we can do. In fact, as our professional part organization or association partners will share later on, they will also be possibly conceiving of projects that are focused, or that are anchored on the thrust of their associations. Speaking of partners, we have, let me just share that we have received a statement from the chairperson of the St. Louis University Department of Social Sciences and Political Science, if I'm correct, Bri, Dr. Naha. Dr. Naja expresses her support and said that let's consider, I hope she represents the department, possible partner for the department to this project. At the same time, Sir Benson Alex Paula, which is in Zoom, also expresses his support to this project. Thank you very much. All right, so aside from those that were discussed on what the project tries to address and what this project is all about, so malamang pinag-usapan natin yung mga assumptions ng project na to. So it's through which that I think we were able to give a clarification to the direction of the project. So what are the assumptions of the project? What do you think are the assumptions or the presuppositions that this project has in terms of a lot of things, democracy, elections, issues?
G, who's gonna answer first? Karen first?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Okay, sige. Yeah, thank you. Assumptions. I'll take off from Jay's discussion on the result of his environmental scan of previous and current initiatives on voters' education in the Philippines. We have, I think, four assumptions, interrelated assumptions for this project, specifically for the paper that we are writing. One is that democracy that we know, the democracy that we know in the Philippines, namely liberal representative procedural democracy, is not working. This is something that many analysts have already pointed out, the crisis of liberal representative democracy. The thing is that kind of democracy has just created, layers and layers of bureaucracy that has alienated and disempowered so many of us. It has created, few winners and so many losers, in a sense. That's one. So we recognize that we can no longer operate meaningfully if that's the kind of democracy that's governing us. The second assumption is that elections are legally and institutionally structured in a way that effectively bars us, from meaningfully participating. You cannot run an election campaign if you don't have millions or probably billions of pesos in your account. You cannot win an election if you don't, do scrupulous things, and those sorts of things. And when you go to, the precinct come election time, you find that you're compelled to choose between two evils. So you're forced to choose, the lesser evil. And there's just no good choice, for us to elect, most of the time at least. So those, and then the third assumption is that voters' education campaigns that tacitly fault the electorate for supposedly not knowing enough is not part of the solution. We believe that's part of the problem. And then the fourth, and I think this is the most important assumption that we are trying to work on, is that there exist local knowledges, practices, customs on elections that we hardly ever hear of, because mainstream discourses of elections and mainstream discourses of democracy tend to obscure these local practices. So what we want, or one of the things that we want to do in this project is to bring to the fore these local knowledges and practices and to document them, because we believe that these practices have, democratizing potentials. So those are the four assumptions that we are working on for the paper. We can expound later, maybe, if we have more time.
Right. Yeah. Hopefully we'll have time to expound more. But I think there's also the intention to publish the paper. So we hope to be able to reach as many interested readers when this paper is published. Di ba, guys? Okay. So anybody who would like to add more to what has been said? That's quite a comprehensive presentation of the assumptions. No, so again, Karen, as discussed earlier, has put emphasis on bringing to the fore the local knowledges and practices in terms of elections. So we have this assumption na hindi siya na ma-magnify o napuput forward enough as it should be. And we think this step is crucial to achieving a quality voters education or meaningful participation in the elections. Okay, so sige, i-dig deeper pa natin kung ano ba exactly what exactly do we want to do. So siguro to supplement the earlier presentation of Fleur on the specific areas of the project. In the case of this aspect of Isip Boto, what exactly do we want to do, or does the group want to do? Now, yes, Louis, would you like to
Hi,
start?
G. Good afternoon. At the onset of our discussion during our reunion, I was kind of assessing what are our objectives as individuals, as an organization, and I kind of realized that as an individual, this is actually I would present three levels of our objectives, okay, or what we want to do for the project. First is our individual objective. I think if you would agree or you would not agree, this is actually a self-fulfillment for all of us. Because as a former political science graduate, this is actually a fulfillment, an achievement for all of us that at least we are doing something for our country. Not only at the back of the door or back of the backstage that we're talking something, we're talking about our government, and now we are on stage and doing something right for our country. And the next thing is organizational. You know, uh, we need more connections. We are expecting that we need more connections. We need more support, and then we need more manpower for our project. And the society on the societal level, we expect that we improve the quality of election in the Philippines one step at a time. I think that's what we want to do for this project.
Right. Mhm. Thank you, Louis. Yeah, I vividly recall how in the middle of so many ideas, you threw the question, what is our objective? And that was essential in bringing us back into the very essence of doing the discussion or the conversation. So, that's a good way to put it, no? So, ano pa ba ang pwedeng maidagdag in terms of what exactly do we want to do for this project? Maybe sige, Karen, you might want to supplement, take off from the assumptions and
Yeah, sige. Well, the initial plan that we have is to launch or organize and launch webinars such as, this um, live streamed webinars or pre-recorded conversations. I'd like to focus on the word conversations because I think that's what we want to do, to invite people from different localities, different communities to talk about their experiences of elections in the past and what practices they have evolved to try to make participation in elections more meaningful for them. We've also identified some experiences that we have heard of. For example, there's this community in Kalinga where they've sort of co-opted, state sponsored electoral practices because, for example, during barangay elections, they meet, they hold these community gatherings even before the formal declaration of the election period. And in these community gatherings, they already choose the next barangay chairperson and the next set of barangay kagawas that they would like to have. So there and they decide on a consensus basis, and the process is very democratic and open and free. So anyone can participate. Everyone can participate, and almost everyone does participate. So before you have the official election period, you already know who your next barangay kapitan is and your next set of barangay kagawads. They're just going to go to COMELEC office and file their candidacy, and that's it. So no false promises, no violence, no character assassination, just simple community gathering where they decide who the kind of leaders that they want to have. So those experiences, we want to document those experiences and those practices by inviting people to talk about experiences such as those. That's one.
Mhm. Yeah. So again, focusing on local practices, no, and I know how you're pretty much familiar with these sorts of practices, Karen, being exposed to maybe various indigenous peoples or groups in the Cordilleras or in other parts of the Philippines that you've been to. So maganda yung naipakitang eksaktong target ng project, and I think this could be this could be concretized rather through, as you mentioned, conversing or fostering conversations with the locals, with the people. If only we can go, to these places where we can talk to the people and gather possible data on their strategies, and maybe learn from them to share about having a meaningful conduct of election. Okay, so thank you. Now let's have we have siguro let's have 20 more minutes for the discussion. How about the opportunities and challenges that we have foreseen or we potentially see this project to encounter when we implement the project? What do you think are some of the opportunities and challenges that may confront us? For someone from the government, siguro, we who is
G, the different organizations that we are in are already the opportunities that we have, the friends that we have, the professors, our friends are the opportunities, our connections are the opportunities that we have. And talking about the challenges that we need to solve and we need to put our head on. One is, let me put that in 4 R's, no? Resources, reality, reaction, and relevance. And when I talk about reality, Karen here was talking about how messy our process was during our conversation, our initial conversation as we were preparing for this project. And because we didn't really realize, or we didn't really know what our issue was. And until now, it's still an ongoing process of determining what our issue is. And I hope there are no more issues that will, surface later on, because, there's a lot of issues that we need to talk about. And this discussion, this conversation will not stop there. And we're talking about reality. The first are, aside from the issues, what's going on in the Philippines, what's going on around us, and who are supposed to benefit. Di ba yun ang pinag-usapan. That's what we talked about. Who are supposed to benefit from our project, who are going to gain from our project, and what do we really need to achieve. I was talking about that during our conversation the last time. What's our objective? Because these are all intellectual individuals and professionals. We thought of doing a lot, but still we have limitations and constraints. And the next thing is the resources. Okay, we thought of how can we do this, and Karen was talking about going local. And of course, if you go local, how are we going to go about that? So we need resources, and I'm not talking only of financial resources. We need manpower, we need methodologies, we need materials, we need different connections and support. That's why we need all of these friends to help us. If we can change one mind to be very objective in voting, then at least we have already achieved our objective. And that goes on. Simple steps make a great impact. And the third, I think, challenge that we need to talk about is the reaction. Because, when we were talking about this, as we moved along, we were talking about how would they react, how would the people react to this? Because, we are all professionals, and who are we targeting? The locals. Who are the locals? How would they react? Actually, Ian was talking about resistance. Resistance is an example of reaction. Okay, and how about the understandability, the clarity of our objective? Is it going to push through the heart and the soul of our beneficiaries? And the last R is relevance. So are we being relevant? How can we connect? How can we who are our target? What medium are we going to use to be relevant in this society? And then I think are the 4 R's are challenges for this project.
Wow, so you were able to think of ano bang tawag doon? acronym, hindi naman acronym, hindi naman
Frame.
um, 4 hours to respond to that question. It looks like, yeah, we would like not to emphasize that our networks individually and professionally are actually good opportunities to expand, or at least in the beginning, no, basically to act on the implementation of the project.
And G, I would also like to put out that aside from it being a non-partisan, I would also suggest that it is also a non-profit project. Am I correct? They may think that we are trying to profit from this. Aside from it not being a non-partisan, we are, aside from this is actually a mission for us as political sciences student, and on the same advocacy as in the government or in saving our country, that we are doing this for our country as well.
Okay. Para sa bayan. Hashtag para sa bayan, sabi nga nila.
Tama.
Yes, Ian?
Yeah, thank you, Louis, for those 4 hours and for those for discussing the challenges. But I would like also to use those 4 hours in discussing opportunities for this project. Siyempre, for the resources, yes, there will be limitations, there will be problems on how to tap resources, but we can use this as we look for manpower, for monetary. We can partner with different networks, as just like Gina said earlier. We can work with academic institutions, student organizations in mobilizing our projects. So we'll not do this na tayo lang eh. We'll be tapping different networks, and that's a good way to start. That's our point of departure for this project. And you also said resistance. Yes, we will be encountering different negative feedback on our project, but we can use that to start conversations with them. Kasi we don't just leave it as resistance eh. We try to penetrate them and to talk to them, and we can start conversation with them. And with that, we're building a dialogue with them. And next is reality. Yes, thank you for highlighting reality. But in doing that, so as we look into the reality, we are doing reflection. As we do reflection, we try to explore more things to do. So that's a good framework on how we start this project: reflection and dialogue, reflection and conversation. As we reflect on the things that we want to do, and we go outside and talk to people, diba? And relevance, yeah, we connect that as well to conversation, because that's the time that we introduce ourselves to other people, and then we make ourselves relevant. That's all.
From the comms specialist. Thank you for connecting that the response to what has been said by Louis earlier. Salamat. There's a lot more that I wish we could have time to expound more. Pero siguro pang huli na lang, so before we proceed to the next part of the program. So we've talked about the project, what it intends to target, its assumptions, opportunities and challenges. How about, or what are the ways in which this project, and we would like to claim that it's going to be successful, what do you think are some ways in which this project, and this is very important, can be sustained? Can be sustained, or can flourish, or can be expanded if need be? If any, if you think there is any potential for this project to further expand or develop.
Yeah, so Gina, I'm going to answer that because yeah, I think that this project has been really inspiring to me. I was just telling I think it was Karen and Brian 2 or 3 nights ago that among all the projects that I am doing, this is something that I really find most meaningful and most relevant. So I'm wishing that we could sustain this, and I'm thinking that we could, put it to the next level, raise it up. Maybe by, I'm wishing that this project evolves with shifting times and spaces. So thinking about how can the project adapt eventually to the post-election time. So maybe it's a different kind of concern as well that we have to address. What are the ways in which we could open spaces for people in localities to participate post elections, to make the elected officials accountable, or even to demand quality leadership from these leaders. But also that's the practical and the applied side of it. But then I'm also thinking that maybe because some of us are practitioners and academics, that is it possible conceptually to contribute as well to coming up with maybe a heuristic that is adaptable to different contexts that other people can use. And I'm currently thinking of how the funds of knowledge as a concept or a framework evolved as well, or different ways of doing endeavors such as what we are doing have been done. But more practically, I'm wishing that we could get more partners who will be interested, but partners who will allow us to be independent, and also to get more funding, like big funding, so that we could expand and do this, nationwide, and to have, to employ people from localities as well, and all these things, so that we co-produce knowledge and make a difference together. So I think those are some of the visions that I am thinking, and I think I share with everybody as well.
Nice. Yeah, I also have high hopes that this could lead to something even more fruitful than its original goal to be relevant for these national elections. Of course, it requires our engagement and more commitment to be able to do that. Okay, so those are hopefully our audience were able to learn from the process that we had to go through, and were clarified about what this project is all about. Thank you very much, friends, for your sharing and for agreeing to be part of this project, because your individual backgrounds are certainly contributory to having a dynamic and of comprehensive perspective to this project. So again, thank you. At this point, we would like to devote siguro the next 10 minutes for questions from the members of the audience, if there are any, and then we'll proceed with the second to the last part of the program. Anyone who would like to ask or share their feedback, you may use the chat box or the Q&A box for your questions, or you may use the raise hand button to be recognized if you want to ask the question with your audio on. Yes, anyone? Again, from the Facebook live stream, Ma'am Naha said, please consider us a supporter and possible partner. We'll keep in touch, ma'am, Dr. Naha. Okay. And also, Sir Jopo Andaya expresses his, how do we call this? Yeah, his bliss to the group, for the composition of the group. So right at the onset, he set a higher standard than most webinars on the topic I've been in these months. Sir Jopo might want to share or ask something to his former students. Anyone from the PAP or from the USAP can share your thoughts about the discussion. Of course, thank you for staying with us until this time. I know it's been challenging for the Philo people to be on screen for the last 4 days of for the summit. Okay, so looks like although there's one question in the Q&A box, let me read the question. Was it not the situation prior 2016? EDSA revolution turned out to be the greatest propaganda. So that's from an anonymous attendee. I'm not sure, however, what's the context of the question? What is this the question is referring to? But would appreciate responses, if any, from anyone.
No, I'm not going to respond to it, but I'm gonna recall the context of the question. I think the question was raised at the onset of this program. I think it was when, I'm not sure if it was Louis or Fleur who were speaking, and then I think the question was raised. So they probably have said or have mentioned something. But I don't want to put them on spot as well. But we can queer propaganda, you know.
Can I say something though?
Go ahead.
Because I think it's a valid question, and many analysts also say sort of the same thing when they try to explain sort of the counter-revolutionary effect of electing a leadership that has authoritarian tendencies. Some people say that the irony of liberal democracy is you have people electing or you have electorate electing people who have authoritarian tendencies through fairly democratic elections. And I think that's a reaction to the failures of what may be called the EDSA regime, because the EDSA regime had so much promise because it was installed post-dictatorship, diba? But the thing is, it really consolidated, all these neoliberal policies that you can see also in other countries. The thing is, the slide to barbarism, authoritarian populism that we see not just in the Philippines but in India, in Trump era United States, in Brazil right now, and in other parts of the world. Some people say these are reactions to the failures of the neoliberal model and the liberal democratic model of governance. But I'm personally tempted to say it's also a crisis of the nation state, because the nation state is structured in a huge, in a grand way, and that alienates us. It deprives us of spaces, of opportunities, for directly, participating in making important decisions that affect our lives and our future. So these are, just some thoughts that I have right now, given the current political atmosphere that we're facing.
Okay, thank you, Karen, for attempting to respond in such substantial input. Jay, you were raising your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah. I think in the same way as Karen thought of the question, I also think that the question is generative. Yeah, I mean, although there's kind of like a little discomfort seeing the question, and to be honest, it's but I want to answer the question by using what the American cultural theorist Lauren Berlant calls cruel optimism. And to me, I understand democracy as kind of like a form of cruel optimism. And Lauren Berlant thinks of cruel optimism as, kind of like a post-Fordist affect, where we attach the things or objects that we attach ourselves to optimistically are the very things that actually hinder us from our flourishing. And the very reason why we attach ourselves to these optimistically whatever objects like democracy is because it provides us a sense of normalcy, that everything is fine. That is why Louis was saying one of the indicators of a viable democracy is when we hold elections and all these things. And so that gives us a sense of normalcy, and we continue to hold on to democracy as kind of like a optimistic object, although in a cruel way, because it's also this very system that allowed the rise of monsters, right? So it's the very thing that we attach our optimism and hope for, is also the same thing that's hindering us from our flourishing. So yeah, it's like that kind of, I don't know, ambiguity or whatever, of inclusion, but at the same time exclude, something like that. Yeah.
Mhm. Perspective, citing from substantiated by that American theorist you mentioned. Thank you, Jay and Karen. We before we proceed to siguro last na lang ito, no? Then we proceed to the next part. Benson Alex Paula asks, is there a designed program to contextually be more proactive in dealing with the existing political condition of the country? So you can read that in the Q&A chat box pala. So is there a designed program to contextually be more proactive in dealing with the existing political condition of the country? Anyone? While you're thinking, PSSP through its representative requests that we would engage in a meeting for a workshop to draft framework, clarify objectives, and set common strategies. Yes, sir. I think this is Sir Darren. We'll definitely do that. We'll keep in touch with you, sir. Thank you very much. Yes. So anyone like to share his or her thoughts about the question? I think there is. The question is, there
yeah, Gina, I'm sorry to disappoint, but we're in the process of coming up with it. And we're going to be very honest, because we'd rather do it this way, in a messy, uncertain, ignorant way, than go out there and tell people this is what you're supposed to do, and all these things. So yeah, we're working on it. And the thing, and what I'm seeing, as the kind of like really also a challenge, it's going to be very context specific, because if we're tapping into local cultural resources, then it would depend on what locality we're going to, going into, right? So it's going to morph. But in terms of like, there is definitely going to be a template or a framework, a generalist framework. Yeah, but we're still in the works. It's still in the works.
Like, this is also the point of, I think, the comment of Ver, who is a board member of the PAP. He said we need to flesh out strategic plan for this and communicate to our partners. We are all in the same channel here as the speakers, but time is of the essence. So more work to be done, and double time, because elections are nearing, so we have to really concretize na even more these ideas. We're here, and after this, we'll be working even more for more concretization of the project. So hopefully, Sir Benson will also be able to contribute to the specific projects, or programs to do. So thank you very much, interlocutors, for your input. Again, we would like to acknowledge your contribution to the discussion, and at this point, on behalf of the organizers, the PSS, PAP, and USAP, we would like to award the Certificate of Appreciation to all of you for being one of the interlocutors at the roundtable discussion of the Isip Boto Mandato, the Voters Education Project of the PAP and the PSS, in partnership with various professional associations and academic institutions, given this 21st day of July 2021, held during the second summit of USAP, National Conference of PAP, and second PAP PARS joint meeting, signed by Dr. J.J. Joaquin, President PAP, Dr. Louis Benedict Ignacio, President PSS, and outgoing Secretary General of USAP, Dr. Danilo S. Alterada. So thank you, Ian Vergel Agsalda, Karen Calderon, Elizar J. de los Reyes, and Louis Ocampo. Of course, Anthony Brian Padilla. Thank you very much. All right. So at this point, I would also like to invite a few people to share their solidarity message to the project. So as I've mentioned earlier, we have professional association partners or collaborators. They have expressed their call this their uh, being part of the project. And today we will be listening to some of them on their expression of solidarity or commitment to this project. Well, as what I said during our meeting, commitment is such a strong term, but we hope to be able to get their support through the short message of solidarity for the Isip Boto project. So we begin with the president of the Philippine Sociological Society, who is also currently an assistant professor at the Department of Political Science and Sociology of the Faculty of Arts and Letters at University of Santo Tomas, and the coordinator of the Faculty of Arts and Letters Student Welfare and Development Board. So let's welcome back Dr. Louis Benedict Ignacio.
Thank you, Gina, and thank you to our discussants this afternoon. And that's very, and I think this is a very good start for us to move forward and towards achieving our goal. From the Philippine Sociological Society, at the very start of this year, when we were doing our planning, we already have agreed to include as part of our objective for the year and for next year to really engage into a voter's education. We saw the need to contribute into making the discourse about the elections, the right to suffrage, and being part of the entire process. We believe that it is a very significant task and responsibility as well for PSS as a professional organization. That's why when Gina and Fleur and I were talking about it and how they would like to invite PSS as part of the partners, I said that's a perfect plan, and it's a perfect opportunity for PSS to realize that objective for the year. As a matter of fact, outside of Isip Boto, in our own capacity as PSS, we already started with our voters' education, and we can combine this with the Isip Boto initiatives and activities. So the Philippine Sociological Society conducts Socio Caravan, and this is a monthly affair for PSS, wherein it's a discussion, it's a kwentuhan about different fields in sociology, and we started focusing about elections with our caravan at the beginning of July. We started with the youth. And from here on, just like with the objective of Isip Boto, going down and going near to the communities and the different sectors, we plan to make the succeeding social caravan sectoral as well. So in the coming sessions of social caravan, we'll be focusing on Mindanao, peace, education, and elections. We'll be focusing on laborers and different sectors within the labor industry, whether you're teachers or even farmers. We'll also focus on sectors of our overseas Filipino workers and the roles that they have to play in an election, even if they're outside of the country. So in consonance and in parallel with the objectives of Isip Boto, PSS will also have activities that we will align and include as part of Isip Boto initiatives. And of course, we will be very much active in the collaboration within the Isip Boto project and initiative. Again, thank you for having us. We'll be happy to help, and PSS is 100% in support of Isip Boto. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Louie. So that's PSS through its president, Louie Benedict Ignacio. Now we go to the next organization or association to deliver the solidarity message through its representative. This is the director of the Institute of Governance, which is a private research and training organization based at the De La Salle University in Manila. Our partner is a full professor in the Political Science and Development Studies Department and in the De La Salle University, Manila, Philippines. He is a development and governance researcher and practitioner with extensive experience in evaluation, public policy analysis research, survey research, and public opinion polls and data analytics in the Philippines, the ASEAN region, and South Korea. So let's welcome Dr. Ador Torneo. Dr. Ador, we can't hear you. We can still hear you, sir. Okay. So we'll try to go back to Sir Ador later while he's fixing his audio. For now, let's go to the third one, to the next partner representative first. Let me introduce the association he is part of. The association is called ang Pambansang Samahan sa Psikolohiyang Pilipino. Ito ay isang panlipunan at profesional na organisasyong itinatag noong 1975 na may misyong palaganapin ang psikolohiyang Pilipino sa iba't ibang sektor ng lipunan bilang isang interdisiplinaryo at makapilipinong pananaw at pamamaraan. The representative of PSSP, siya ang pangalawang pangulo ng Pambansang Samahan ng Psikolohiyang Pilipino. Kasalukuyan siyang lecturer sa Pamantasang de la Salle, Manila at Pamantasang de la Salle, Dasmariñas, Cavite. Isinusulat niya ngayon ang kanyang disertasyon tungkol sa prejudice na religiously motivated sa ilalim ng pagpapatnubay ni Dr. Diwa Quiñones ng Universidad ng Pilipinas, Diliman. Let's welcome Professor Darren Espino Dumao.
Hello po. Naririnig po ninyo ako?
Narinig po.
Ayan. Salamat po. Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat at sa bumubuo ng Isip Boto. Nakikisa ang Pambansang Samahan sa Psikolohiyang Pilipino o PSSP sa kolaborasyong Isip Boto na naglalayong magkaroon ng mabisang voter education para sa ating mga kababayan, partikular sa mga sektor na di naaabot ng popular na media. Sa harap ito ng nalalapit na halalan 2022 at ng di mababaliwalang kalagayan ng diskursong politikal sa ating bansa. Naninindigan ang PSSP sa pagsusulong ng makakapwa at makapalipinong pamamaraan sa edukasyong politikal. Kagaya ng madalas nating mabanggit, malaki ang maitutulong ng lokal na kaalaman para ma-develop ang demokrasyang angkop sa ating lipunan at kultura. Sa ganitong paraan, ma-empower ang ating mga kababayan na magkaroon ng mataas na pagtingin sa kanilang sarili at boto. Sa pagtingin na mahalaga ang bawat isa at makapangyarihan ng bawat boto, naniniwala ang PSSP na hindi imposibleng makamit ang karangalan, katarungan at kalayaang karapatan ng bawat Pilipino. Binubuksan ng PSSP ang mga pinto ng aktibidad nito sa Isip Boto. Handang makiisa ang buong kasapian sa layunin at aktibidad ng ating kolaborasyon. Subalit, naniniwala rin ang PSSP na hindi rito matatapos ang pagsasaayos sa ating lipunan. Nakahandang makiisa ang samahan sa patuloy na pagkilatis, paghusga at paggabay sa pagpapatatag ng mga demokratikong institusyon sa ating bayan. Masaya kaming nakikibahagi sa kolaborasyong ito kasama ng lahat ng mga naghahangad ng mas mahusay na demokrasya para sa ating bayan. Nananalig kami na aanihin natin ang bawat butil ng ating pagsisikap kung hindi man sa ating panahon ay sa mga susunod na henerasyon. Para sa kanila ito at para sa ating lahat. Maraming salamat po at mapagpalayang araw.
Maraming salamat, Darren. Napaka-meaningful no, nung mensahe na yon. At I hope we take on the challenge nga na hindi ito magiging sapat na solusyon para sa mas malaking kailangang tugunan. And thank you sa reassurance ng commitment ng PSSP. Thank you very much. Now we listen to Dr. Ador Torneo for his solidarity message. Go ahead, Dr. Torneo.
Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Thank you very much, Tina. Thank you very much to the organizers and congratulations sa pagla-launch nitong photo. So, yung aming institute, ang Jesse M. Robredo Institute of Governance ng University, ay nakikiisa at sumusuporta sa layunin ng Isip Boto. At kami ay magagalak na pagbigay ng suporta sa anumang aming makakaya. So kasama ko ngayong hapon ang aming program manager ng Jesse Robredo Institute of Governance, si Mr. Randy Pacho. At marami kami nakikitang posibilidad ipag-collaborate, no? Pagbigay ng suporta, halimbawa sa research na nais na gawin grupo na may kinalaman sa Isip Boto, iba pang mga activities. So, bahagi ng mission ng Institute, Jesse Robredo Institute of Governance, i-encourage, i-enhance at supportahan ang citizen participation bilang lifeblood ng isang demokrasya. At naniniwala kami ang pag-i-invest sa citizen engagement, sa participation ng lahat ng grupo ay malaki ang bahagi at malaki ang matutulong sa pagyabong ng demokrasya sa ating bayan. So isa sa pinakamalaking inisyatiba sa kasalukuyan ay tinatawag naming Participate. Isa itong initiative na lumalayong magsulong ng mga epektibo at innovative na mga approach upang ma-enhance ang demokrasya dito sa Pilipinas, kasama na ang pagpapayabong ng partisipasyon ng mga mamamayan sa electoral process at pagtulong sa electoral reform. So meron kaming mga kasama ngayon na mahigit 1,800 civil society, people's organizations, academic institutions sa buong Pilipinas. So, yun, bilang bahagi ng inisyatiba na to, meron din kaming mga ilang activities kagaya ng sa darating na buwan, pagkakaroon ng parang voter registration bilang konkretong measure, bilang konkretong paraan para mapadami pa ang mga eligible na botante na makabahagi or makibahagi sa susunod na taon. So, kanina nag-usap kami ng program manager ito namin yung mga pinag-uusapan ninyo. No? Napakaraming opportunity sa tingin namin may maitutulong kami sa inyo. Lalo na ang pag-suporta sa research, ilang activities at yun, nais naming ipahayag na handa kaming tumulong sa abot ng aming makakaya sa anumang paraan. Magandang hapon sa inyo.
Salamat, Ador. Magte-testify dun sa um, willingness ng Institute of Governance para sa initiative na ito. Ganon din yung mga iba pang partners no, na nagsalita. Salamat at kayo ay tumugon sa imbitasyon. So maliban dito sa mga partners na nabanggit, PSSP, PSS, DLSU Institute of Governance, of course, kasama natin ang mga board members ng PAP at iba pang mga individual professionals, we would also like to announce that the PNPRS, another philosophy organization in the Philippines, has also officially accepted our invitation to be our partner for this project. So thank you very much, PNPRS, headed by its president, Dr. Johnny Macaranas. Again, if you are interested to be part of this project, please keep in touch with us. And the link has been sent in the chat box on how you can maybe contribute. No? May mga information dyan na fill out nyo lang. Let us know how you would want to contribute. So we'll keep in touch with our partners, our collaborators, and the rest of those who will be interested from here on forward. Marami pa tayong gagawin, definitely. May sapat na may panahon pa tayo para manghikayat na ng mga mamamayan para mag-register to vote. And definitely things will not stop at the end of the elections. So on that note, I would like to thank everyone once again for being part of the launching of the Isip Boto MANDATO Voters Education Program of the Philosophical Association, PSS, and our partners. Madami po no, nakakatuwa that we, through this program, were able to receive some assertions of interest. So thank you again, and we will be posting updates about this project. You will find out about some activities that we will do for this project through our Facebook pages or social media accounts. On behalf of Dr. Fleur Denise Altes Albela and Dr. Louis Benedict Ignacio and my Pulsai friends and our partners, thank you very much. It has been a pleasure learning with you, and we hope to see you again in our next activities. That's all for today. Thank you.